Good afternoon and welcome to the December 20th work session of the Greensboro City Council. Since we are doing a hybrid meeting, we will take attendance. Mrs. Hightower?
I am here.
Dr. Wells?
Here.
Mr. Matheny is not here. Mrs. Hoffman?
Here.
Mrs. Thurm?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem? Mr. Holt?
Present.
And obviously, I am here. I didn't, oh, sorry, Mr. Bruce Waiter.
I am present.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yes. So we are going to talk about the ARP distribution, and I don't know if it's Mr. City Manager or.
Yes, if I can go forward.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and council members. We were last back to you on November 3rd to make some recommendations to you with regards to the $31 million left in the ARP funds. Originally, we were allocated 59.1 million. You'd already approved 27 million of that. So when we came on November 3rd, I made a set of recommendations to you with regards to how the $31 million were to be distributed or allocated to different requesters. There were some discussions around what your preferences were. So I've met with you individually to kind of run through some of the revisions to recommendations. So what we want to do today is AC and Larry Davis will present to you based on the feedback that we received from you, what the proposed recommendations for the $31 million allocation should be. So we've got in front of you a spreadsheet. I would say hold on to that for now, if you would. Just pay attention to the presentation on the screen. It's just about 4 slides. I will go through that and then we'll come back to that spreadsheet. I also want to say that if you decide to support the manager's recommendations today, this is not the last time you will see the individual allocations. We'll still have to come back to you based on each person requesting or each entity organization requesting for this ARP fund. So whatever you choose to do today. However, we also believe that the further we delay making a decision on this, the more difficult it is for some of these funds to meet the needs for which they were being requested. So just wanted to bring that up there.
And this is not on tonight's.
This is not on
agenda.
tonight's agenda. It's not on tonight's council agenda. No. So hopefully with what we hear back from you today, we'll come back to council sometime in January or so, so that you kind of get to see where we are with regards to the ARP recommendation. But hopefully today will be the last work session we'll have on this, so we don't have to be having endless work sessions on the ARP fund. But it's definitely not the last time you will see this. So that.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. John's going to help me walk you through a very short PowerPoint that will just try to remind you of the mileposts that you've hit since November 3rd. So just a quick reminder of those overall numbers. Our total allocation, 59.4. We previously allocated and awarded by council through formal action was roughly 27.5 million. So what we've been discussing with you since November 3rd is that balance of roughly 31.9 million. As the manager said, on November 3rd, we brought you a presentation which included an outline of recommendations for the balance of those funds. For here, we've grouped them by category. You've got details of this in multiple presentations, but just as a reminder, you see the different categories that added up to the 31.9 million on November 3rd. As the manager said, subsequent to that date, he's met with you individually, gotten back some of those feedback from you, and has developed a set of revised recommendations, which he shared with you individually. So I'll just point out a couple of the major changes that occurred between sort of November 3rd and immediately following. You'll see in that middle section there, you see something that says community council requests was roughly 2.6 million. Council's direction, that was eliminated, so you don't see that anywhere in the bottom section, and you won't see it on any of the spreadsheets that we talked about this afternoon. You'll notice a bullet point there on the revised recommendations for public safety. There are 2 projects that were added, the manager's recommendations that were not part of that November 3rd recommendation. We'll talk about those in a minute, but this essentially was a fire station and the development of our first neighborhood hub. So those 2 were added based on conversations that the manager had with you. So those are two of the primary changes, and we'll go through the specifics here in just a moment. So now take another step from those initial revisions that the manager had provided to you in the individual meetings, and then he took subsequent feedback from you after those meetings and created the recommendations that are being provided for your consideration today. Probably the biggest change you see there is affordable housing support went from 3.8 to 4.8. That was a pretty consistent message that was heard from the vast majority of council members. That number just simply wasn't high enough. So the recommendations you have today are at 4.8 million. Some of the items that were under infrastructure renewal came out of the recommendations, and that's essentially how we funded that increase in affordable housing support. And so that takes us to the spreadsheet that is in front of you, and I'm gonna take a breath and let John get that up on the screen.
So while we do that, I'll point to a couple of things in the spreadsheet in front of you. Under the affordable housing for the Greensboro Housing Coalition, even though it says it's the grant plus matching incentive, we're taking the matching incentive out, and it's just going to be a straight allocation to the Greensboro Housing Coalition. Originally, we had said 250,000 will be provided to the coalition, and then if they raise $1, we match it with another $1 up to 250,000. But understanding that housing is something we cannot just be throwing dice over, it's just going to be a straight allocation of 500,000 to the Greensboro Housing Coalition. We also had a meeting with Councilman Haita, Mayor Vaughn, and also Councilman Holstein, together with some members of the community last week with regards to down payment assistance. If we're out of funds, and if we don't fund that, it also means that there will be potential that we will be regressing on how affordable housing rather than progressing. And in order for us to be able to achieve at least 100 homes, we will need about $1 million to be allocated to that purpose. So that's part of what you have as affordable housing allocation under the affordable housing piece. So that 2 million that you have there, $1 million of that will be dedicated towards down payment assistance. Just to make that clear before Larry walks you through the, again, that kind of puts a lot of focus on affordable housing. One of the things Larry will also share with you is that the ARP is not the only funding source for affordable housing. We've also got the $55 million from the 2016 and the 2022 bond that are supporting affordable housing. And out of that, you approved $5 million for the community foundation some weeks ago. So again, you're gonna keep getting a lot of requests to add more to affordable housing, but the fact is that that continues to be your focus as council. And the ARP is not the only way to focus on it, but also maximizing the investment our community has made in terms of the 2016 and the 2022 bonds.
And we increased the from 0.69 to 170, that's 1.1 with the last budget.
Yes.
So working from the spreadsheet now, just to give you a little bit of background and context on these columns and kind of where they came from, when and where they were created. That first column there says managers revised recommendation. That is after our November 3rd work session. So that was the manager's work product after that group meeting that we had for November 3rd.
I was making sure it was on now.
Okay. So those recommendations that you see in that column were brought to you individually. This is what the manager discussed with you after November 3rd, after that initial feedback that we had in the larger group. The next column there, it says council support based on individual review. And I've titled that column about a half a dozen different ways. So I'll try to explain how I finally landed on that. What we basically tried to do is we went through all the different iterations that council provided us, your individual preferences, and looked for any places where a majority of you landed on the same number. So as you go down that column, for example, you see Habitat for Humanity, the original recommendation 1.5, council support 1.5. That does not mean that all of you recommended 1.5. It means that the majority of you did. So that's why that number is where it is. So anywhere you go down that list and you see a number that matches the city manager's rec, that is what it's indicating. That is, as individuals, a majority of you agreed or did not change that number. Now, the areas that are highlighted in yellow were areas in which there was no council majority. One person wanted $500,000, one person wanted 600,000, and so forth. And they simply would not have been accurate to fill in a number. Now, that's only in a handful of places, but nevertheless, we did not have a council majority on those, so those were left blank on that column. Any questions on that column before I move on? So the third column, manager's revised recommendation 1220, is essentially the manager taking that original feedback plus the additional individual feedback and coming back with his revised 31.9 recommendation. So essentially that third column is the updated recommendation from the city manager. And a couple of areas have been highlighted where he has changed his recommendation. For example, Public Library and MMOB had an allocation of $725,000 in his original recommendation. You see that's gone now, that's at zero. Some other items that if you just scan from left to right, you will see where there have been changes from the original recommendation. You see two projects that are new to the list. That's not part of the November 3rd conversation. The Science Center expanded parking and the tornado reinvestment areas. Those came up as part of your conversations with the city manager. So by necessity, to add those in, he had to have a different number because they weren't part of his November 3rd recommendation. So there you see zeros under his original column, but now under manager's rec, you see 375 and 250. So he's worked to get his number back to 31.9. You see again, looking from the two managers columns, you see an increase of $1 million in affordable housing. And Ty just sort of went through the details on that. You see a reduction of $1 million in infrastructure renewal and economic development, a net reduction of $1 million, which allowed him to add that extra $1 million in affordable housing. And public safety and employee organizational support remain the same from the two columns at $10 million and $3,475,000 respectively. Let me stop there. Any questions on those three? Those are three big juicy columns. So we'll make sure everyone is
Can you explain to me this tornado business? What is that?
So this is a conversation that we've been having with regards to a school property in East Greensboro that we could actually have an opportunity based on community input in time to determine what it can be used for. While we do know that there are some other funds, tornado recovery, is what I'm looking for. Tornado recovery funds that can help with the purchase of that said property.
Mhm.
That's not the end of the story. You still need to be able to put some money in it, depending on what the community ends up deciding is best used for. So that's why we know that $250,000 is probably not enough. for that property, we know that. But we felt that it's a placeholder and a place to start. If it becomes something that's used for housing, then it becomes part of the housing focus for council. If it becomes maybe a community center, then it becomes something that we have to go back and look at how much do we need to really invest beyond this 250,000. So it's a placeholder for what we think could happen.
Could happen.
Yes.
All right, okay. I had not had that conversation, so I only heard snippets of a conversation, so. Okay. Funny how I get left out. Okay, thank you.
The final two columns are just for information, really. You see the column previous council approved. That's the 27.5 that you've already approved. That's just showing you in the different groups, the different categories where that money fell. And then as the manager mentioned, we just did want to remind readers of this spreadsheet that we do have that additional housing funding through bond funds, 55 million total from the two most recent bond referenda. And as the mayor pointed out, we now have a full penny in the Nussbaum fund that was increased as part of the 22-23 budget.
I thought the $25 million left from the 2016 bond has already been allocated to something.
It has, but we still
Okay.
want to acknowledge that it is part of your recent housing initiative and efforts.
Got it, thank you.
I did have a quick question regarding the Greensboro Science Center expanded parking, just much like the tornado reinvestment, just a little detail on that.
On the science center.
Science Center, yes.
So I think maybe Chris can speak to this more than I or Nasha, but if you've had any conversation at all or you've gone to the science center, parking is almost impossible. You
Oh,
can't,
yes.
and it doesn't matter what time of day. And yet that's one of our economic drivers.
Yeah, it
As a
attracts
city.
more tourists than almost anything.
Yes,
They need the park.
they need the parking, and this is really just temporary to be able to accommodate. So the science center themselves, I think they've raised about 300 and some thousand. So this is really matching what they've raised so that we can have these 200 spaces. I don't remember how many spaces.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay, to be able to achieve that. Again, the numbers could come way higher than that. We do not know, but this is what the request is today.
But if we give this money and the numbers come higher, are we obligated to that money?
I think we might have to scale the project.
Or they might have to raise more money?
Yeah,
Or
we
they-
might have
But
to-
but we're not, we aren't committing to a number of dollars.
We're committing this amount no more.
That's
Okay.
Right, it's
Okay.
just like the
Not a
tornado,
percentage.
it's just like the tornado reinvestment as well. Could be way more than 250,000.
I would just say that I know that we have gone several times to the science center and turned around and left because there was no parking anywhere to be found.
So just as a kind of as a wrap up on this, again, as the manager mentioned, this is not on your agenda tonight. And individually, these projects would have to come back to you for contract approval, budget approvals. But we would like some direction, if you're comfortable, on whether or not we're moving in the right direction with the remaining funds so that we can begin to bring those items to you for formal adoption at future council meetings, either as a set group or as individuals, whichever you prefer.
So may I get clarity, Larry or Mr. City Manager? You talked about the money, so you didn't move the $500,000 from Habitat, which I think they're in the throes. They can raise some of that money right now. So I would have liked to seen them get just $1 million because they have some opportunities to do more in other spaces, and we could have helped in other areas rather than giving them all that. Particularly, they want to build only in East Greensboro. But so apparently you decided not to move that because everybody wants Habitat to build in East Greensboro. But you spoke about the down payment assistance money. So if you want to talk about East Greensboro, that DPA benefits that side of town the greatest. if that's the case, so that million, when we talk about 100 homes, at $10,000 each, and people are in the queue right now waiting. They're like in limbo to make sure that what we're gonna do with this down payment assistance program, and they've been sitting out there since November. I was hoping that we could go ahead on and get those funds allocated. From the meeting we had last week with the professionals in the room who do this work, all stated that their clients have been asking questions in addition to lenders, realtors, et cetera. What is the city doing? Have you abandoned the program? So I was hoping that this was where we would get at least $1 million from to be able to fund that DPA. So if it's not on the agenda tonight, then that's another step. We gotta wait until January 3rd, January 15th.
So I hear you, Councilman Haita. I think on the DPA thing, it's got to be before January 11 or January 12. So if we go forward with, if you give us a direction that we're headed on the right path here, we could come back to council with that $1 million allocation on January 3rd, council. So that will still be in time for the for that January 12th, I believe, January 11 or January 12th deadline, I think it is for the DPA.
Yeah, because many borrowers are sitting in queue waiting. Their loans are kind of hanging in the balance. So we're impacting people's lives. So this does help affordable housing because people buy, which in the last 3 years we've done this program. It has benefited 1,031 individuals, much more than the hashtag 100 that we thought it was going to just simply do, but it's done so much more. And it's benefiting an area that's been underserved normally, and has a lack of affordable housing, creating home ownership as well as generational wealth, as we know. So I'm sorry. So I really would like to see this. I understand my council members may have some questions or something, but I think the program within itself has been successful. So, and it's we're doing the DPA for the public servants as well. So it's a both and, it's not a but for. And so it will help both sides of the spectrum that we want to try to help. And this was tweaked last week. And so I would like to see it put on the agenda as soon as possible to move it forward.
So it'll be on the next agenda.
Yes, so we'll place it on the next agenda.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing that fact.
But I have a question, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
The music hall project has gone from 2 million to 1.1. I believe that's what, about $4 to $5 million.
Roughly about 4 million.
4 million.
Yes.
So how will we finance this sometime over the next 18 months or so?
So it was originally $2 million, but after speaking to one of you, trying to balance how we address the science center or the tornado reinvestment, while at the same time we addressing an increase in affordable housing. That's where we took the 900,000 from to redistribute that to go through. I know from my conversation, it's a project that could be done over an 18 to 24 month period for that 4 million, 1 million has been raised. I believe that this could be a challenge to our private partners as well, that as the city invests in this, we may have others that may partner with us. We may see something similar with regards to the innovation district. It's $1 million, but that matches a federal grant, which is about $3 million to invest in that corridor. So I think it's going to be a lot of partnership discussions with all this game changing infrastructure related investments in our city.
I mean, I understand this amount of balance in here. I was certainly hoping that we could stay.
Increase that.
Increase the amount.
We're under a deadline to spend these funds in terms of not just allocation, but actually have the funds out the door, I understand. Or did we do enough
We,
to
yeah.
lift that?
Our supplanting method allows us to work on our own timeframe.
Okay,
I would still think that for usability, transparency, and priority, you still, the deadlines that the federal guidelines gave us are probably still worth trying to keep to.
just short for. I was just worried about something like the music hall that
We
is
go
going
beyond,
on,
yeah,
that it would go behind.
yeah.
If you're comfortable with that.
I'm personally more concerned about the rising costs.
Yes.
So for example, the 9 million for that fire station at Maconnell, that was taken from our most recent cost, right?
Yes.
That could go up.
Absolutely.
And so it's very important. The 5.9 for Bryant Park Soccer, Bryant Park North, that could go up. Okay, so in 2017, council said it would take $5 million to get Bryant Park Soccer up to date. And here's 2022, we're still talking about 5 point some million. So I worry that the longer we take, the more that increases. And again, that's another economic driver for us. Everything that's under that infrastructure, renewal, economic development, could result in more costs, and yet almost all of them can create jobs and help workforce development.
So question on, thrilled that under the employee support, we are delaying the health insurance premium increases. That is not sustainable then, correct? We do not have anything to sustain that in future years yet.
That's correct.
I knew that was probably the answer, but
So
I'm hoping
this
that
is-
something can come forward that we can
What would
hopefully continue.
What would the percentage of increase have been?
We were looking at-
If we had not absorbed it.
We were looking at 3 to 6%, depending on what kind of coverage
Yeah.
you chose, because we have multiple.
Right.
We have 2 plans, and within each plan, there's 4 different levels of coverage, but it would have been anywhere from 3 to 6%.
So we don't have the buffer next year, looking a year down the road, we don't have the buffer. Do you have any thoughts on if there are increases, if that increase would include this increase since it would be unfunded then?
I mean, it's an annual review, based on the market and our own employees' experiences with health and what it's costing us. We're self-insured, so it's our money, our pockets that it comes out of. It'll be challenging to have multiple years without rate increases for employees, but it really can't be predicted a year out.
Yeah, I just wanted to keep that in everybody's mind.
Right.
It's something we need to consider in the future because the health insurance costs certainly go up a lot. Thank you.
Do we know what an average employee cost is?
We do. I can
Yeah,
I'll provide you.
I don't know. Yeah.
We just, one sort of number to keep, kind of rule of thumb, if you will, is we generally try to set rates so that employees, on average, now this varies from employee to employee, but on average, employees are covering about 24-25% of our total cost, and the city is picking up 75-76%.
A 3% increase in today's world is not exorbitant. I mean, you never want to see an increase, but 10%, I'd be concerned. But, average is 3%. We'll just have to see, we got to go through this year. We'll see
Right.
next year. Some costs are coming down, or will come down.
So
Regarding the down payment assistance, and I know that it is on the agenda for later on tonight, we've talked about the reinvestment areas, the 5
Yes.
areas that were highlighted in the housing study. I don't know that we have formally adopted those reinvestment areas, and when we spoke to the realtors, they were excited to hear about things like Ramsden Woods and Kings Forest, and it is not, they are not listed on our website. You know, we did accept the report from HRNA, but we are not enacting it exactly the way they said, such as our down payment is since will be forgivable instead of loans. Do we need to adopt these 5 reinvestment areas for this new program that we're doing?
I mean,
I believe we have to, that they should be spelled out. They need to be on our website, that they are the 5 reinvestment areas that people will qualify for a larger down payment assistance.
I agree, I think they should certainly do that.
so I think they were adopted as part of housing GSO, so I'm thinking that maybe we've already.
Well, they've never been put on the,
Okay,
they're not on the website. It is not referenced on the website. That's why I don't know if we need to formally go ahead and adopt those.
I would suggest that you've already adopted them, but to the extent you want to reinforce it by, you know, even adopt them again, if you want to do, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that.
Or just make certain.
Or make certain that it's
they're published
reported
in all the places.
Published
they
in the
should.
right places and all that kind of stuff.
I think that's what we're.
There's absolutely no problem that you're doing.
Yeah, I
But I
mean,
do think you're safe now.
we have to do something because the realtors were excited to hear about those neighborhoods and
yes. So maybe that's something we can do in conjunction with the DPA dollars on January 3rd. We can bring both to council. A
to
read
spell out
to
those
spell out
5.
those 5 investment areas that this dollar amount will be going towards supporting down payment assistance in those areas.
And then in the meantime, we need to get them up on the website.
Yes.
And there's got to be a better description of what people are eligible for.
So we'll do that.
Okay. Any other comments about the proposal? I'm overall, I'm, 95% happy with everything that's on here, so that's pretty good. I think we've come a long way. And again, you said that we'll vote on these individually as they're spent. Like at the next meeting, we'll vote on the DPA. So if there aren't any other comments.
I mean, there are others that you feel should come up on January 3rd, come to you on January 3rd. That could be an opportunity to have that conversation now, so we bring them together.
Okay,
I would think certainly the fire station, if we're worried about that, anything we're worried about prices escalating on, I think we should, if we
Let's
go
move
ahead, let's move it so that people can get started on it. There's no reason to put it off.
and we also, I think, have to move forward with the Greensboro Housing Coalition.
Yes, we do.
Is there any reason that we wouldn't go ahead and just do the whole list?
you can do.
I think we would.
Just
Just go ahead and allocate it and.
I mean, I-
We can do that.
So Ty, as to the fire station, has the land been purchased?
For the fire station,
Has the land been purchased?
the good question.
No,
We have.
not for this purpose.
So kind of hard to build one without the land to put it on. So we identify,
You gotta have the money available. Right.
so have we identified the area that it would go on?
This man.
I think it's got a map there.
Okay, I'll let Chief Robinson speak.
I can certainly speak to that. So the fire department wants to be part of economic growth, as you well know. And so I will just share real quick some areas that we would be looking at on this map. There you go. So looking at development on the east side, looking in the Youngs Mill area, the I guess we call it Mount Hope area, the Mill Stream area, and then Burlington and Bloomfield Road area. So kind of out Highway 70.
Uh-huh.
Also go down to the Short Farm Road, which the city owns property at Short Farm Road already. We have 30 acres here. And we purchased some property at McConnell and Cassie Road to address this area. So we own property there. So we just need to prioritize where we want to go. And it looks like most economic development is out the 70 corridor. That's kind of where it's kind of lifting up to us at, but I will work with Mr. Davis in the manager's office to kind of give you, we have 2 properties already secured, but we're looking at a third one with some developers now with Mr. Wilson's help.
Great.
So it's the 9 million for one, but it's for more than one fire station.
No,
So it's just one fire station, 3 trucks and some staff.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
I'd like to recommend that before we vote on this and before this becomes public, totally out in public decisions, that perhaps the city manager and the mayor reach out to Kathy Manning and sit down and just out of a courtesy, not that we need her permission, but out of courtesy, explain where we want to spend this money and the rationale behind it. Because I know she's expecting to have to report back in Washington on a regular basis on what's happening. And I think out of a courtesy.
So we met with her earlier this afternoon.
not.
Yeah, myself and intergovernmental relations manager met with Congresswoman Manning this afternoon, just kind of go over legislative process and agenda. And then we did mention to her that tonight we'll be coming to council with a recommendation on the $31 million, and kind of give a high level of where we expect them to go, but also that we will be sharing with her this information after council meeting tonight. So she felt comfortable with where we were headed with what we discussed.
And she had a good announcement for us
Yes.
yesterday, another $4 million for the Elm Street.
Eugene, complete street.
Oh,
project, yes. Eugene, $4 million, complete street project.
She has brought more money to Greensboro in 2 years.
Yes.
Than any representation has for decades.
Yeah.
Kudos to Congresswoman.
There you go, Goldie.
So are we good? Do we want to just pass the whole list on the third?
Yes.
I think that is the consensus.
Okay.
Okay. Good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you,
The Mayor Pro Tem does have a motion.
I guess I do that, Mayor. I move that we go into closed session to discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the Greensboro area, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Firm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sharon? And we will adjourn from this room. When we go back, we'll do it upstairs, so we know further business down here today.
Okay. So I just stay here? Did you hear me?
Yes,
ma'am. Just stay on Zoom.
Stay here? Okay.
But be careful what you say.
Yeah.